What's up everybody, Brian Zane here with another predictions video. Of course, this Saturday night, AEW returns to pay-per-view with Full Gear. Needless to say, a lot has gone down in AEW, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes, since what went down at All Out and all the controversy that came from that show and the post-show scrum, etc., etc. I think that Full Gear is going to be a big opportunity for AEW to hopefully answer some of the criticisms and the questions people have about the trajectory of the company at this point. And let's begin with a big match I know a lot of the eyes of the wrestling world are going to be watching here. It's going to be a night of some returns, to say the least, and one of which is going to be Saraya's in-ring return. For the first time in 5 years, she'll be having a match, this time against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I'm really excited about this one. I think Saraya is a character who a lot of fans have wanted to see get back into it and get physical again. And now that she's clear and she's back, there's this world of opportunity, because a lot of the wrestling world, the women's wrestling world, has really passed her by, and this is kind of a great opportunity for her to get back into it, assuming she stays healthy. I know a lot of people are kind of concerned about her coming back, much in the same way people were concerned about, Daniel Bryan when he came back from his injury and things of that nature. So I think it's natural, it's normal for people to be concerned about this, but I mean, I have a little bit of that deep down, but I mean, at the same time though, I am hopeful that she's ready and that everything will be hunky-dory. This match has a lot of interesting angles going into it. Britt's promo she cut on Wednesday on Dynamite leading into this, I thought was great, really showing that it's not just a case of black and white, it's not just babyface versus heel. Britt is completely justified in her stance of being the face of the women's division in AEW, the work she put in to get to where she is and to be this person of clout that she is in AEW today. And for her to be kind of going up against, to put it bluntly, AEW's newest toy, their newest big signee, their newest big get from WWE, I think that alone is a huge story there. So it's really interesting how they're going to go with this one. I mean, my prediction as to who's going to win, I think Saraya would win this one. It'd be how often do you see someone make the big comeback after a big injury and they not end up winning? I think that, there might be a return match down the line where I think that Saraya could give her the win back, but I think on a stage like this, you want Saraya's big in-ring return to kind of start off on a grand note. It makes sense for her to win, but yeah, I'm definitely curious how this match physically is going to go and what kind of story they're going to tell. This next match was added pretty recently. It's for the TNT Championship as Wardlow defends against Samoa Joe, who's the ROH TV champion, and Powerhouse Hobbs. I'm greatly looking forward to this one because I love seeing Hoss fights. The big agile Hosses of today squaring off, I am just always ready to sit down and watch that and enjoy it. And so to see those guys and Samoa Joe all together, that makes for a real combustible element that I'm very interested in seeing how it's going to go down. Samoa Joe breaking up that dream team of Wardlow and betraying Wardlow recently. I thought that was kind of a nice twist to it. Wardlow, has been spinning his wheels almost since he won the TNT Championship. I feel that there's not been a real big storyline for him to sink his teeth into, and this feels like the biggest one, honestly. So if something can kind of branch off from this, especially with Powerhouse Hobbs being kind of thrown into this mix, then I think that's something to look forward to. As far as who I think is going to win this matchup, I don't see Joe winning this one. I think he's firmly planted as the ROH TV champion, and I don't know if it's Powerhouse Hobbs' time yet. I would love to see him have the TNT Championship, but not yet. I think this will be a big test for Wardlow, and I think he is ultimately going to win here, and I think he might be beating Powerhouse Hobbs to do it. Boy, what a year Jeff Jarrett has had, to say the least. He started things off in 2022 in GCW, feuding with Effie, and then he gets a job in WWE. At the same time, he works Ric Flair's last match. That same weekend, he's refereeing the tag title match at SummerSlam, and now he's here in AEW, and he's El Kabonging folks left and right and harassing crew members and such. He has teamed up with Jay Lethal to take on Darby Allin and Sting. A lot of layers in this thing. The history between Jarrett and Sting goes back decades. They wrestled several times in WCW and, of course, in Impact. So there's a lot of great history there. Jeff Jarrett, like I said, he got that bag, as the old saying goes. He definitely knows how to get in and know the right people, find the right opportunities for himself. He's got an executive job in AEW now. This man definitely knows how to get things done. This one's a bit tricky for me to call. My gut's telling me that Jarrett and Lethal are going to win this one over Darby and Sting. I also wouldn't be surprised if maybe we get a spot where maybe Darby's going to try a coffin drop, bouncing off the ropes, and Jarrett hits him in midair with a guitar, causing a disqualification. That's kind of something that's playing in my mind right now. I wouldn't be surprised surprised that it ends in a DQ, but I know that's so rare in AEW in general, especially pay-per-views. We might not get that. So I'm going to go with the safe route here and say that Jarrett and Lethal are going to win this match. Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, and Luchasaurus will face off in a solid steel cage, and I'm very excited about this one. This is my pick for what could be the emotional show stealer of the event. I think the history these two have, not just what we've seen with them on camera for the last 3 years in AEW, but also the history they've had that goes back further than that when Jungle Boy was just a child and Luchasaurus was still coming up in wrestling. I think that is a great part of the story. And now that Christian Cage has been involved and kind of driven a wedge between them, and Luchasaurus is evil now, like how's that going to play into things? I'm sure there will be some Christian Cage chicanery going on in this match, some chicagery going on in this matchup as it goes on. But I think that Jungle Boy definitely needs to get this win. I think that if they are going to have that eventual blow off with he and Cage, there's going to have to be some more building of momentum here. And I think it's going to be a hard fought thing. I'm sure that Jungle Boy is going to be put through the ringer in this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if old Jack Perry pulls out a big victory here. It snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. The TBS Championship is on the line when the actual champion, Jade Cargill, defends against the woman who has stolen the physical belt and is claiming to be the champion in Nyla Rose. I think a good belt thievery storyline can work, and I like the way Nyla Rose has been portraying this as this total troll and is claiming, oh, I'm the champion, this and that. You know, it's hilarious. I think Nyla's personality really shows through, like not just on social media, but also on TV when she's doing this stuff. It's a hoot for me to watch, and it's good to see her kind of like getting this play on TV again after being kind of shunted down to dark elevation for so long. And I think it's going to be a real test for Jade. It's really her first real meaty storyline that I can think of with Jade in this push she's had, because all of her wins up to this point, there have been some micro programs that go maybe 1 or 2 weeks, but ultimately she just beats them once and she's done and she stays undefeated. So if she wins this one, which I think she will, I don't think it's going to be a huge shock, but it will be, I think, a big step in the right direction for her character and her career. I don't see Jade going full babyface as a result of this, but I think once she disposes of Nyla Rose, gets her belt back and keeps the streak going, I think that will be just good for her, just to get her some more experience. And to have an opponent like Nyla, who is unlike anyone else that Jade has faced so far in her 40-some-odd matches she's had, I think this is going to be a very interesting test. It may not be the prettiest match in the world, but I think it will be a fun story. I believe Jade is going to win. And then rounding out the women's matches, wow, actually 3 women's matches in one show, and they all have kind of different storylines attached to them. What an accomplishment in AEW. For the interim Women's World Championship, Toni Storm defends against Jamie Hayter. Of course, the big story that was brewing for a while, it seemed, was Jamie Hayter maybe branching away and getting out from under Britt Baker's shadow, and I bet you we're going to see more of that here. I don't see Jamie winning this one because I believe the money is still in an eventual matchup with Toni Storm and Thunder Rosa whenever she gets back from injury, and we got to merge these 2 women's championships at some point. So I believe the money is still there. This could be a great matchup to be sure. I just think that Toni Storm is going to end up winning this one. The Acclaimed defend the AEW tag titles against Swerve and Our Glory. It's the 3rd match in their series. Each team has a win over the other one, so this rubber match here has the potential to be a barn burner if it's anything like the previous 2 matches they've had. Whether or not Daddy Ass gets involved here, I think we're going to have quite the match on our hands. It's going to be a spectacle to be sure. And I think, oh, by the way, shout out to the Acclaimed for the music video they ran on Dynamite this week with the return of Captain Insano. That was great to see. And of course, the guys pretending to be Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland were funny as well. That was very well done production there. I wonder if this is going to be the match that kind of sets things in motion with the Keith Lee Swerve breakup that I feel has been kind of like teased since they began teaming. And especially now that Swerve is going kind of loco. He was cutting off or doing something with Billy Gunn's fingers a few weeks ago, and he's hanging out with Rick Ross, and Keith Lee doesn't like the vibe he's getting here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the match, finally, where we see that kind of thing blow up and we see those 2 disintegrate as a team. But either way, I think the Acclaimed is going to win and retain this one. For the Ring of Honor Championship, Chris Jericho will defend against Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and his own teammate in Sammy Guevara. I think the fact that it's a 4-way match here is kind of a red herring. It makes you feel like, oh, there's going to be a title change, but Jericho won't be involved in the finish. I feel that the way that it's going now, I don't see Jericho losing the championship at this point, especially in a non-one-on-one situation. It's kind of a situation where you'd want to see like one person and one person only get that chance to go one-on-one and knock Jericho off his post and do that. And I don't think it's going to happen here. If it's not Bryan Danielson or Daniel Garcia to be the person who dethrones Jericho. At this point, I'm not really sure who it could be, as ROH is still kind of like hurtling through the air right now with no real landing point, no real place for it to be on its own. I'd like to see the ROH stuff. I like what I'm seeing with it, but I think it needs to distance itself from the AEW stuff, because the AEW stuff is just kind of like shriveling up with all this ROH exposure. So hopefully we can see something break off soon, but if not, I don't see Jericho like losing the belt at this point. And I mean, I don't think it's going to be against Guevara. It might be against Danielson, but not against Castagnoli either. So my pick with this stands that Jericho will retain. Well, this match was just announced on Wednesday night and got a huge response when they did, as the Elite, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, made their long-awaited return and challenged Death Triangle for the trios titles they never officially lost. This match definitely has the potential to be one of the most emotionally loaded of the evening, not necessarily from like an in-ring storytelling or drama perspective, but more in just the fact that the Elite are back and they're immediately placed in this title match, and in my opinion, they are undoubtedly going to win the belts back. Like, oh, thanks for keeping the belts warm for us, guys. Thank you. It'll be business as usual, I think, and that, you know, if the original plan was for the Elite to be the inaugural trios champions, then it gets derailed, then it makes sense for them to have the belts back, and then, oh, we'll just kind of carry on as if nothing had happened. And I'm sure it won't be that easy and that clean cut. I would not be surprised if we got some kind of statement from them afterward, kind of explaining things, in some kind of degree. And there are people who definitely picked sides after what happened at All Out, and some people, are mad that AEW seemingly stuck with the Elite in this one, and they're bringing it back for this title match. I think there's people who are going to be mad about it, and that's fine. But I think the match itself is going to be bonkersville, and I think that these 6 guys are going to go absolutely ballistic, and they're going to make fans forget about all the drama that went down there. And I think that, if and when they win these belts, I think it's going to be, kind of a step towards hopefully some kind of rebuilding, some kind of going along the way and just kind of pushing forth business as usual kind of thing. Like I said, it's going to be an insane matchup, but I'm definitely thinking the Elite are going to win this one. And finally, for the AEW Championship, Jon Moxley defends against the old devil himself, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Don't let the weeks of babyface pandering and speeches and heels beating up on MJF fool you. I maintain the fact that this is definitely going to be some kind of ruse. Whether or not MJF's still working for the firm is not really relevant to this discussion, but what I think is going to happen is that William Regal is going to betray Jon Moxley and help MJF win the championship. Or maybe not help him win, but definitely side with him after MJF wins. I do think this is the time for MJF to finally win and claim the championship. If not now, I feel that then they'll have wasted their opportunity with him, with the momentum that he got after he came back and the story they've been trying to tell, where he says he's the devil, but he still has he's conflicted apparently. It's all a ruse, because he's still the devil, and he's done this before, where he will lull you in and then swerve you and figuratively poke you in the eye or hit you with a low blow or something and reveal his true self. I feel this is going to be the biggest example of that, where in the end he's going to be exactly who he thought he was. He's going to be the devious bastard. He's going to screw Moxley out of the belt, and William Regal is going to change allegiances and join up with him. I think the Blackpool Combat Club, frankly, has done all it really can, and if Regal leaves that group, I think the rest of that group, with no more person who the namesake of Blackpool makes sense, then they can kind of separate and do their own thing, because I think guys like Danielson and Castagnoli are kind of just in a holding pattern in that group at the moment. So I think it makes sense from a lot of different perspectives for Regal to leave that group, join up with MJF, and give him all this extra credibility and oomph for me, this massively prickish heel champion running things here. That makes a lot of sense to me. So in my eyes, MJF wins this thing. Depending on whether or not Regal turns on Moxley before or after the bell, it's kind of up for debate, but I do believe that's the outcome we're going to get on Saturday night. But those are only my humble picks, folks. What do you think is going to happen Saturday? Let me know in the comment section below. And of course, I'll see you on the other side with my full gear review dropping Saturday night. And don't forget to vote in the beard poll if you haven't yet. The link to that is at the top of this description, where you can choose which wrestling facial hairstyle you want to see me rock for a couple of weeks. There is one clear winner at this point, but hey, you know what? A little bit of extra voting never hurt anybody. Until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.